Welcome once again this morning to this time of worship. It is good for me to be back, and thank you everyone who was asking how Kirsten is doing after her knee replacement. She is doing well and gathering with us this morning from the beautiful and scenic view of her iPad. So she is here with us. Yesterday, in the morning, after I had finished my class teaching at the gym, I went to Starbucks. It's my normal Saturday morning routine. I had just ordered my coffee there inside the Starbucks when a tense and very anxious man yelled at me. Quickly, I thought to myself, what's going on? I had my mask on. I was 6 feet away. What I had noticed, though, is that after I ordered coffee, I started looking back at that little case where they keep food. And so I had slowly sliding back toward him. He puffed himself up, made his body this kind of wall and blocked my path. He pointed his finger at the arrows on the floor and he yelled at me, "Follow the arrows." I apologized. I went around, got back in line, and followed the arrows to look at the food once again. But as I stood there in line the second time, I couldn't but help think, what was that all about? Was it really about my rule breaking? Yes, I was breaking the little arrow rule, I admit it. But I think there was something deeper going on. For as he yelled at me, I saw the fear in his eyes behind his mask. Fear of me? Maybe. Fear of the virus? Maybe. Fear of me as a carrier of the virus? Possibly. It also got me to think about how hard it is to be neighbors, to be in community, when tension and anxiety and fear is so high. I almost asked him as he picked up his coffee order and I was waiting for mine if we could sit and maybe talk. But I hesitated. And there in an instant, he was gone. And my chance to minister with him was lost. But that was my own fear, my own anxiety about being rejected, about being told that I wasn't the kind of person he wanted to be with. So fear and anxiety, tension, goes both ways between two or more people. It happens, I think, especially in church communities, when the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations of a life get us sort of anxious and cooked up a little bit. We start getting angry and tense at one another. And even though I can say that is very natural, it is also very detrimental for our community life together. That's why when I was reading Psalm 115 this week, it really was sort of a hopeful psalm for me about what it is like to be in community together. It provided some guidelines and sort of refreshed me on what does it mean to be God's people together. The psalm starts out, "Lord, who may dwell in your tabernacle, who may abide in your holy hill." How are God's people supposed to faithfully live and act with one another? And I got to tell you, as I read it and as you heard it this morning, you probably went, well, that's not a very high bar. It's not that complicated how we are to get along with one another. Here are some things we don't do. Don't slander others with your tongue. Don't do evil things. Don't cast discredit upon your neighbor. Don't give and take bribes. Not that high a bar, really. And then the do's. Lead a blameless life. Act the right way. Speak the truth from your heart. Reject the wicked. Honor the faithful. Speak and act with integrity. Not that high a bar, really, on how to get along with one another in community. And then I'm reminded of the political turmoil these last years, how fatigued and frustrated we all are by the ongoing pandemic, about how beat down we feel because of all this outrage that is there on social media. Our communal bonds have weakened. Our standards of behavior with one another have fallen. Living, working, playing together is not easy. I remember the fear in his eyes in the Starbucks line. Living, working, playing together is not easy. And it impacts how we are going to regather as God's people here at Messiah. It is something to be aware of and to be on the lookout for, that we as God's people do not let our tongues go astray toward one another. I've always marveled, how many people, raise your hand, how many people here have been to Holden Village? Few people. Good, excellent. I've always marveled how at Holden Village there's this creation and this sustaining and this enlivening of community life together. I mean, think about it. The bus goes up the hill and down the hill every single day, bringing new people into the village, taking people who have been there for a while out of the village. The community of Holden is in constant transition, constant transformation. They are constantly having to adapt to new folks coming and going. How do they maintain that wonderful sense of Holden community? Maybe something we, as Messiah, can learn from a little bit. Well, we can't do all these things right now, but in time we will. I mean, for Holden, community is built around eating together, worshiping together, learning together, playing together. One of my first times as pastor to Holden, I went to the big giant coffee urn and poured myself a big cup of strong Scandinavian coffee, put a little salt in it, and choked it down. But as I was standing there with it, looking for a place to sit, something amazing happened. Something that I wish and hope would happen more when we can have coffee hours together again. I was standing there all by my lonesome, and yet I was noticed. A young couple at a table across the way waved at me and they said, "Hey, come on over, sit with us. You look new here." I admitted I was. And then they laughed and they said, "Well, everyone's new here. That's why we welcome one another." I was invited. I was welcomed. We sat and we shared our story together, where we were from, what our hopes and dreams were, what we were going to do when we went back down the hill and down the lake. It was a delight, a pleasure. They had patience and an openness and a kindness to a stranger in their midst. We were able to get to know one another, and it felt really good. What an amazing thing that would be for a church coffee hour to notice the newcomer, to welcome the stranger, to say, hey, come over here and sit down. Oftentimes, though, in churches, because we know each other so well, past angers and resentments get in the way not just of us having deep fellowship with one another, but it puts us at a distance from the newcomer in our midst. And I think that's why James is so intent on warning us not to live out of anger, but live out of the opposite: delight, pleasure, patience, openness, kindness. Anger, James says, you must understand this. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. However, you have, and listen to this carefully, welcome with the meekness of your souls the implanted word that has the power to save you. The implanted word, a gift from God that sinks deep within each of us, into our hearts, into the very core of who we are, an implanted word that bears the fruit of righteousness as long as we're willing to do it, to live it. James says, be doers of this word, not merely hearers. You hear the word, you do the word. You take the gift in, you share the gift with others. What does this look like? It looks like taking care of orphans and widows in their distress. That's what living out this word looks like. A care for the poor, the hungry, the stranger. And yet, what exactly is this implanted, transforming word? What is it that can do such powerful things through us? I tell you, it's like feeling the music inside of you. I told you my Starbucks story that I had just come from teaching class at the gym. Many of you know I am a body pump instructor. I've been so for about 5 years now. And when I first started learning how to teach a group fitness class, everything was about learning the choreography, learning how to do everything right in the right order at the right tempo. I was always trying to make sure I didn't mess up, that I followed the rules exactly as they were laid out in front of me. 2 down, 2 up, 3 up, 1 down, tip, pull, knees, rise. Follow the rules. Make sure to do it right. It was drilled into our heads in instructor training, 100% choreography, 100% of the time. And it burnt me out. It's like, this is terrible. I don't want to do this. This is like trying to live inside a straitjacket and move at the same time. But my mentor instructor came to me and gave me a little hint. Yeah, the choreography is important. Make sure you know it. But live the music that gets inside of you. Every single body pump track is choreographed to music. She told me, live that music. Let it get inside of you. Let it transform how you do this class. They're wise words, not just for an instructor, but for followers of Jesus. There is a music that God implants within each of us, a rhythm, a passion, a love that God gifts to each of us. And as we live it and begin to let it go, we become doers of it with others. If you're a pianist, you know what that's like to go beyond scales and those kinds of really tedious routines at the keyboard, to let the music fill you and then to express it through the instrument. It's the same as if you were a cheerleader, that you know the choreography, but then the music lives in and through you and you share that with others. You could be a cellist, a dancer, name whatever it is. But when the music is alive within you, you live differently with yourself and with one another. It is the amazing gift of God. This implanted word that we receive is the music that saves us. In the first chapter of Mark, Jesus proclaims what this good news music is that gets inside of us. Jesus says very simply, the music is here now. This is the time. Love and grace are here for you. Turn to these things. Be them, live them. It's that simple. God is for you, not against you. Now live that way. That's the implanted, simple music that's gifted to all of us in our baptisms, that we take into ourselves week after week as we commune with one another. That is the beauty that transforms community into something special. God has given us this gift of music deep within our souls, our hearts and our minds. And with it, all those evil things Jesus says can rise up from our hearts are quelled. And all the worries about how to live those external things like washing this and doing that, the worries about that are put to rest also. What is true for us is that we live the music deep within inside of us. I've been thinking to myself this week, what is Messiah's music? What is the music that God has given deep inside us as a people together? A people that, by the way, haven't really been together for years and many months. It is our job now to find together, to recapture that gift of that music as God's people here, and to begin to live out of it again, not in fear of a virus or those with us, but out of that deep gift of love and grace that is such an amazing melody for our life together. It's here. I hear it all the time. I think all of us, if we just paid a little bit of attention, can also hear it. It will guide us. It will gather us. It will enliven us so that as we move through and past this time of pandemic, we will shine brightly with the light that comes from the Father above, as James says, and we will live a beautiful, musical life with one another and for our neighbors. Thanks be to God. Amen.